So September really just came and went, and with it a ton of amazing games released. My original goal when making videos for this channel was to review every game I ever played, but after quickly realising how impossible it was to keep up with, I'm hoping this format of going through each title I played in September in a bite-sized format for each game would be the best possible compromise for that original vision. One quick thing before jumping in, but there won't be any spoilers for the games shown in this video. Also, I'm going to be going for a more casual, laid-back kind of vibe this time around. And with all that out of the way, let's get started with the first game that I played in September, starting with Visions of Mana. I was really hyped going into this one, following its announcement, and what we ended up with definitely delivered on its original vision. My only few gripes with the game was the camera during some boss fights would zoom really far away, making it hard to see your character. On top of that, similar to Final Fantasy XVI, some of the elemental attacks laid on top of one another would make for a lot of visual overflow on the screen, which would make my eyes burn. Outside of those issues though, the combat was definitely its strongest part and never felt grinded, with every character having 3 unique movesets on top of fulfilling different roles gives this game a great amount of customization. Sometimes spamming magic felt a little overpowered since there is no cooldown outside of these really short animations the characters have. Story wise, it's just something simple, although they do throw a curveball here and there. Whilst it's not something that would get me emotional like crying or anything, it never got boring, and the pace that you visit new areas at is very brisk and never felt tedious. This game overall took me around 50ish hours, with it tying me over enough to want to do its post game. I also have another video feature in this game I made recently if you'd like a more in-depth breakdown of what it's all about. Anyway, moving on to the next game. The next game I played this month is one of its biggest, that being Astro Bot. I had a ton of confidence going into this one. Team Asobe, the devs behind this game, are comprised of some of the best industry devs out there, with them being the remains of the beloved Japan studios. Every level in this game is different. I remember seeing around the time of its launch how it's the unofficial Mario Galaxy 3, and I couldn't agree more on that statement. At the same time though, it also feels distinct enough to stand on its own. It's just the similarities with it being set in space and borrowing aspects from those games makes the comparison very apparent. However, and I'm not sure this is a hot take at the minute, but Astro Bot in my opinion far surpasses those games. Unlike Mario Galaxy, levels are much longer, and I mean that in a good way, feeling very realised and exploring each power up to its fullest. Granted, some of the one-off gimmicks levels would have, I wish had more screen time. Literally, my only issue here is I wish we got more cameo levels and just more game in general. It's not like the game's lacking in content in any way, it's just that 3D platformers come out very rarely nowadays, and it just made me want more. It's hands down the best exclusive on the PlayStation 5, well, that and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I even wrote a script for a planned review of the game back when it dropped, but I wasn't sure whether or not it would do well, so I decided to hold off on it. But regardless of that, this game is well worth your time. I don't think words can really do this game justice with the amount of charm that's on offer here. It will take you back to a better place, one free from Twitter beef and console wars, which are really stupid by the way. A great game can stand on its own regardless of what box plays it. Anyway, Astro Bot is a joy through and through, and going for 100% completion, I had a great time with this one. The whole thing didn't take me long to get through, being around 25 hours to experience all that the game had to offer, but with there being free DLC, I'm looking forward to coming back to this one. Funnily enough, at the time of making this video, we actually got that very DLC announced, so it won't be long till we get to play that. Now for a big shake up, we have last month's Famicom Detective Club, Emio The Smiling Man. Going into this one, I wasn't sure what to expect, but reviews for the game and Nintendo's interest in marketing for the title really caught my attention. It's going to be a bit tricky talking about the gameplay for this, with it being a visual novel, so I'll focus more on the story. That being said, gameplay wise, it really feels like it was pulled right out of the 80s. Sure, we never got these games originally back then, but if you're familiar with the early Lucasfilm games like Maniac Mansion, The Secret of Monkey Island, or Day the Tentacle, the interface should be very familiar here. Playing the game through that lens felt oddly nostalgic. Okay, so the biggest push for this game is its story, and I won't be saying too much outside of it being a murder mystery, and that it goes into some really out there subject matters and themes. I don't think I was this shocked at a game's story and themes from Nintendo since playing Mother 3. Also, this isn't the kind of mature mercy the internet jumps to, I'm talking more psychological, but there are some moments and screens that surprised me here on the visual side. More in particular with the violence and depiction of blood. This game is an 18+ here in the UK, and for a good reason. Some moments really disturbed me and were stuck in my mind long after putting the game down. The narrative really bottles you up with this one, giving you so many questions and no answers, making you piece together any clues and past leads to this case. For my playthrough with this game, I played alongside someone else and it really enhanced the experience. Having us both remind each other of past events and debating different conclusions and predictions we had for how the story would pan out. The CGs are also really nice in this game. Overall, Emio feels like a mature adult oriented game, and not just for its depictions, but the patience you'll need for this one. The game never gives you any of that instant gratification nonsense that as so many games do nowadays. You have to slowly chip away at it as you find out its deeper plot. This game roughly took me around 15 hours to get through. My only complaint outside of the old menus maybe feeling tedious to some newcomers is the voice acting. I have nothing against the Japanese dub, but it's just that when I looked up this game, they said it had full voice acting, which is technically true, but they should have specified Japanese only. It is understandable that maybe dubbing this game in English is a bit risky too, since the whole series in the West is still recent, and I'm not sure how much of a following this game will have in the future. But overall, this is a great game, and even better if you can speculate alongside someone else. Also, really quick, I got a new microphone thanks to some amazing friends and family. If you're seeing this, once again, thank you, and from this point onwards, I'll be using the Rode NT mic. Okay, back to the fourth game, more of a title on the backlog here. We have Valkyrie Elysium, which dropped back in 2022. Okay, so this is what I like to dub to bring back a really niche series with a die-hard fanbase, only to kill it. That surprisingly happened twice in that same year. I'll elaborate more later since the other game is a part of this video, but the long and short of it is that the Valkyrie profile series of games are these incredible 2D platform RPGs where you play as a Valkyrie and pretty much go against Odin's wishes as you band together against Einherjar, who are your companions in your adventures as well as your party members. The second game in particular, Silmeria, is one of my all-time favourites. After the game dropped, the series went missing for a few console generations, outside of some spin-offs and ports, only to abruptly make a return in 2022 under a reboot called Valkyrie Elysium. This time around, the Valkyrie themselves have no name, already showing a lack of personality, but maybe that's the point, being a vessel made by Odin just to do his bidding. Personally though, it feels like a bit of a cop-out since the first two games had amazing main characters with great personalities. Also, the unique 2D platforming / JRPG / fighting game has been replaced with a pretty decent but bland hack and slash gameplay style. You even have Nero's Devil Arm to lasso onto enemies. It's funny how almost every hack and slash released after Devil May Cry 4 has this move. Anyway, past aside, this entry really goes what made the original games unique. I hate dogpiling on it, but for this series to die now after this title and us never getting the promised third Valkyrie profile with Wrist really leaves a bit of taste from this entry's existence as a reboot. By itself it's inoffensive. I even like some aspects, for instance the Einherjar you can use for elemental attacks, which is a cool concept. The many different weapons and movesets alongside the charming shell shaded look is pretty good here. The game is pretty inoffensive by itself, but it's once you realise the blood on its hands by throwing all the series history and world building aside, especially after the masterpiece and charm of the second game, is where its issues start to rise. If this game was called literally anything else, I'd have no gripes with it. But yeah, overall not a bad time. Only took around 20 hours to get through, but some levels really overstayed their welcome. Anyway, gonna have to move on from this one to avoid it just becoming one big rant, a sad tale to a true gem of a series. Up next we have my favourite game I played this month, being Void Stranger. I'm not sure where to begin with this one, so we'll start with the gameplay. It's kind of a cross between Crypto the Necrodancer and classic 2D Zelda. You progress down this void and each floor will have you solve a puzzle. There's something about this game that I really can't put into words. The story itself has a ton of intrigue throughout and the characters especially. If you're familiar with the game One Shot, it has a lot in common with that game's story. I really don't want to spoil this one, but my next video will feature this game and go more in depth on what it does for the medium on all fronts. We're talking gameplay, narrative, and level design. This really was an experience I've never felt in a game before. Personally, I tend to put uniqueness at the top of what I want out of a game. If any of this intrigues you, it's on Steam for less than the average pizza and it's well worth the dive. The void just does something to you. My favourite comment on this game that I've heard is that similar to the moving blocks in the game itself moves neurons in your mind. Okay, I get if that sounded a bit out there, but having played the game for myself, it makes a lot of sense. There's also a ton of replay value. I usually put 50 hours into the game and I still have reasons and content I've not yet seen to boot it up for. This really was the biggest surprise of the month for me. The game will really challenge what you think can be done with the medium if you have the patience and resolve to stick with it. Its effect it had on me is going to be felt for a long time. Alright, from my favourite game of this month to my most hated. We have 2022's Soul Hackers 2, the second part of my Valkyrie profile run. Revive a dead series with a cult fanbase only to gut everything that made the original special and for it to tank. Crazy how this happened twice in 1 year, with both games being long dormant niche series from the 90s. I'll start with what I liked about the game. Firstly, most of the cast. One aspect the narrative attempts which I respect is that the entire party doesn't see eye to eye with everything, and to be honest, I wish more games attempted that. Not having the entire party have the same moral alignment is a concept I wish I saw more in storytelling. The main character Ringo is pretty cool, mainly because her design has a ton of green, but the whole archetype of being an AI learning humanity can be a charming character trait. Okay, that's it for what I liked. First of all, this game is way too bright and destroys the original's vibe of being this 90s era Japan from the future where it's the cyberpunk age. The original game's dark undertone is now this strange neon-centric aesthetic that I'm not a huge fan of personally. The soul hacking part really annoyed me, so now it's used as a Deus Ex Machina narrative device so vague in what it can do that it can literally bring back the dead with no issues. They tried to play around with the idea, but the story has so many gaps and the way it tries to have a Shin Megami Tensei moral alignment system is so poorly implemented here. Unlike those games where the endings aren't good or bad just based on your decisions, this game shoehorns it in at the last minute with a very obvious good or bad ending. Okay, final round will be the actual gameplay. The original title is one of the few first person dungeon crawlers that I actually like. This time it feels like Discount Persona with the original first person viewpoint gone. Also, the combat in general is awful. I just switched to easier, I wasn't going to grind for this one. My biggest problem is that the combat has the same core problem as Final Fantasy VIII. All party members have no identity and can have virtually the same kit. Sure, it gives customization, but what's the point when no character has their own unique moves? I know this is a personal preference at the end of the day, I just think that if they wanted to do this, they should have just stuck to how the first game did it with you holding 6 demons. Anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. The saddest part about this one is that if it had more time in the oven, I think it would have been alright. There are moments I liked here, and the first game isn't perfect, but it misses the mark and charm that the original had. So glad I played Voice Stranger between this and Valkyrie Elysium. Playing them back to back was not a good idea in retrospect. Alright, here we have the final game. I've just finished this one, and it's very recent, so I'll keep my thoughts as spoiler free as possible. We have The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Straight away, this is an amazing, triumphant return to 2D Zelda. It has that same freedom of solving the puzzles as the open world games, however here, it maintains that classic structure unlike the recent entries. The different echoes you can make copies of are great, and Zelda's kit really stands apart from if you were to just play as Link. You can even do a slight dodge roll, and there's a lock-on mechanic making aiming much smoother, both being implemented from the 3D games. The dodges are my favourite parts, putting your movesets to the test and really unlocking the crazy movement that you can do in this game. Story-wise, once again spoiler free, I really like how much this game acknowledges Link and what he's done for the people of Hyrule, especially after Tears of the Kingdom gaslights his achievements from Breath of the Wild. The man deserves respect, and seeing that here as well as it feeling like the classic stories is sure to please some of the older fans. Also, and I get this might be me fanboying, but having Zelda transform into Link and in the literal sense her gaining the courage to continue what he started when freeing her in the opening is just awesome here. The music that plays during the ability also has that same energy. I also just really like how you finally get to play as Zelda in the mainline entry as the main character. You can tell they wanted this to be a different experience, no more finding the hookshot or the swimming ability, and after that the ability to dive like in previous 2D games. It really makes that clear. I expected to die in the water in the beginning, but the game makes it apparent that the path to progression is really unlike any other game we've seen before. This also really feels like a 3D Zelda made into 2D. It's hard to explain, but it just has that depth and mechanics you'd see done in those entries. It's gotta be a 10 out of 10 from me, looking forward to 100% in this one. In fact, this video would have been out sooner if it wasn't for how great this game is and it being so hard to put down. Okay, and that's it for the games I played in September. Here's a little ranking of them on screen. Not bad overall, a decent bit of variety opposed to just one genre. That being said, moving on to the month of October, it's looking incredibly stacked when it comes to game releases. But what games have you been playing recently? I'd like to know in the comment section. Also, any feedback on this video would be appreciated. Thanks for watching and have a nice rest of your day.